The SDGs have also begun to attract the interest of the private sector, which rarely takes public policy and goals such as an SDG framework as something that is relevant to its work. The secret of success is far more likely to emerge if we look at an objective we want to meet under one goal. How do we use the same dollar, the same euro, the same rupee to also achieve benefits in additional goals? That's when development investment effectiveness becomes a real multiplier. Let me give you a simple example. We often talk about pollution. Pollution has major impacts. Many of the world's cities are now rife with pollution affecting health, creating enormous costs. If you want to address pollution, we can also address 3 or 4 other goals. We can, for instance, address access to energy, because cleaner energy sources provide not only health benefits, they also provide access to energy to many of the poor. We can also address the goals of the Paris Agreement, which is to decarbonize our economies. And ultimately, we allow also, for instance, a continent such as Africa to finally crack this challenge of having access to power, to energy, because this is fundamental to an accelerated development. And interesting enough, in today's world, energy markets, but also in the technologies we have available, all of these goals can actually be met with one investment. So it's a good illustration of trying to say, look, you can pick out goals that are of particular relevance to your country, absolutely, but don't neglect the opportunity to also address other issues. But what is particularly interesting is that the SDGs have also begun to attract the interest of the private sector, which rarely takes public policy and goals such as an SDG framework as something that is relevant to its work. And yet, in my interactions with the financial sector, the insurance sector, but also the private sector more generally, I sense a remarkable interest in working with this framework, both to, in some ways, de-risk the future into which they have to invest, and secondly, if you take the financial sector, also to create entirely new opportunities to invest. We have a world that is full of capital, full of money, looking for places to invest. And I think opening up the SDG agenda to also leveraging private investment is an enormous opportunity. And a bank such as HSBC recently launched an SDG bond, and it was 3 times oversubscribed. So we have new markets also for leveraging finance emerging. That's probably the biggest new opportunity to accelerate implementation, while governments set the right policy framework and use public finance and policy to incentivize these markets. Without Germany's support and without the support of the member states, a program such as UNDP simply cannot function. There is also a very simple arithmetic here at play. For every euro that Germany were to invest in UNDP, and let's say its contribution to the financing of UNDP and its core funding is, let's say, for argument's sake, $50 million. For every dollar that Germany invests, it will leverage another $100 from other countries. This is part of the logic also of working together in a multilateral system. You can go to scale, you're able to tackle issues that individually, even with the growing development budgets of Germany, it would never be able to address. Countries don't need to reinvent the wheel every time they try to address an issue. So whether it is about a way to remove fossil fuel subsidies, whether it is about the best forms of poverty eradication, whether it is also the lesson that, it's not just about getting people over the $1.90 threshold of income per day, it's also to face the fact that 40% of people fall back into poverty, often because of, for example, somebody falling ill in the family and all savings being used. So we are working with the private sector today to learn the lesson of how do you create a market for microinsurance. This is something that is happening in different parts of the world. The German Development Institute, UNDP, we are all part of a global knowledge economy, if you want, or an access point for evidence-based policy making. And I think that is a vital piece of the infrastructure that allows us to look at the future of development, not anymore in terms of only national strategies or sectoral strategies. We're actually looking at a global community of soon 10 billion people being able to achieve a sustainable development outcome.